India has always been a spiritual springboard. Its civilization dates back 5,000 years. All these years, many religions appeared and disappeared on its horizon. Hinduism is the prime religion in terms of its followers in India. But there are many others which have millions of followers. India's own version of Islam, Sufism, Christianity, Sikh and Buddhism are other dominant faiths here. Besides, many offshoots of Hinduism have also dominated the scene since very early ages. Buddhism is one such example. They were either revolts against the Brahminical order or began with the personal efforts of individuals to find the ultimate truth. One of the biggest and most successful religions that sprang before Christ was Buddhism. For its sheer simplicity and persona of Buddha, it caught the imagination of the people. It still happens to be one of the leading religions of the world today. By the 7th century AD, it spread throughout East Asia and Southeast Asia. At that time, Buddhism probably had the largest religious followers in the world. Ironically, in later years, its appeal declined in India, its birthplace, and was sidelined by Hinduism. Nevertheless, it is still very much present in India, though not with its former glory. It had a tremendous impact on India's art, culture and philosophy, though it was foregone by the masses. It all began with the life of Siddhartha Gautam some 500 years before Christ. Born a prince, Gautam got disillusioned with the luxuries of life and set out to search for the real truth. Eventually, under a tree in the forests of Gaya, he resolved to stir no further until he had solved the mystery of existence. Here on the seat my body may shrivel up, my skin, my bones, my flesh may dissolve, but my body will not move from the seat until I have attained enlightenment. After 3 days and 3 nights of meditation, Siddhartha attained enlightenment and insight, and the answers that he had long sought. He then spent 7 weeks at 7 different spots in the vicinity, meditating and considering his experience. Breaking through the final barriers, he achieved the knowledge that he later expressed as the 4 noble truths. All of life is suffering. The cause of suffering is desire. The end of desire leads to the end of suffering. And the means to end the desire is a path of self-discipline and meditation. And the best approach to live life in fullest is to take a middle path, avoiding all extremes in thought and action. Bodh Gaya is a religious site and a place of pilgrimage associated with the Mahabodhi temple complex in Gaya district in the Indian state of Bihar. It is the place where Prince Gautam became Buddha, the enlightened one. The name Bodh Gaya did not come into use until the 18th century. Historically, it was known as Uruvela. In 2002, the Mahabodhi temple located in Bodh Gaya was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. For Buddhists, Bodh Gaya is the most important of the 4 main pilgrimage sites related to the life of Gautam Buddha, and the other 3 being Kushinagar, Lumbini and Sarnath. Bodh Gaya is a vibrant center of living faith. The complex has the Mahabodhi temple with the diamond throne called the Vajrasana and the holy Bodhi tree. This tree was originally a sapling of the Sri Mahabodhi tree in Sri Lanka, itself grown from a sapling of the original Bodhi tree. It is believed that 250 years after the enlightenment of the Buddha, Emperor Ashoka visited Bodh Gaya. He is considered to be the founder of the original Mahabodhi temple. With the decline of Buddhism in India, the temple was abandoned and forgotten. It remained buried under layers of soil and sand for long. The temple was later restored by Sir Alexander Cunningham as a part of his work for the British Archaeological Society in the late 19th century. In 1883, Cunningham, along with J.D. Begler and Dr. Rajendralal Mitra, painstakingly excavated the site. Extensive renovation work was carried out to restore Bodh Gaya to its former glory. The Mahabodhi temple at Bodh Gaya is the home to the ancient temple of Lord Buddha, located just east of the Bodhi tree. The temple's architecture is superb and has a beautiful stone railing around it. The Mahabodhi temple has a 150 feet high tower which contains a gilded colossal image of the Buddha in the Bhumi Sparsh Mudra, or touching to the ground pose. Depicted on the walls of the temple are scenes from Buddha's life. After attaining enlightenment, Gautam set out to propagate his newfound wisdom. He delivered his first sermon at Sarnath, now in Varanasi district of Uttar Pradesh. Sarnath is the deer park where Gautam Buddha first taught the Dharma and where the Buddhist Sangha came into existence. Sarnath from Saranganath means Lord of the Deer and relates to another old Buddhist story in which Bodhisattva is a deer and offers his life to a king instead of the doe the latter is planning to kill. The king is so moved that he creates the park as a sanctuary for the deer. Sarnath, also known as Isipatna, is mentioned by the Buddha as one of the 4 places of pilgrimage where his devout followers should visit. The Buddha went from Bodh Gaya to Sarnath about 5 weeks after his enlightenment to join and teach Panchavagya monks who had earlier gone to Isipatna. He taught them, they understood, and as a result, they also became enlightened. At that time, the Sangha, the community of the enlightened ones, was founded. The sermon Buddha gave to the 5 monks was his first sermon, called the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. It was given on the full moon day. Xuanzang found at Isipatna 1,500 monks studying the Hinayana. Buddhism flourished in Sarnath in part because of kings and wealthy merchants based in Varanasi. By the 3rd century, Sarnath had become an important center for the arts which reached its zenith during the Gupta period in the 4th and the 6th century AD. Sarnath became a major center of the Samatya school of Buddhism, one of the early Buddhist schools. At the end of the 12th century, Sarnath was destroyed by Turkish Muslims and the site was subsequently plundered for building materials. Sarnath contains the most impressive remains. The Dharmarajika, Chaukhandi and Dharnik stupas are outstanding. There are also the remains of a monastery and the beautifully polished lion capital of Ashoka, which is India's national emblem. Interestingly enough, Buddhism is a religion in which there is no place for God. It is atheistic in nature. A Buddhist does not believe in anything that cannot be empirically proved, including God. Instead of believing in God, the Buddhists believe in humanity. They believe that each human being is precious and important, and all have a potential to develop into a Buddha, a perfect human being, by replacing hatred, anger, spite and jealousy with love, patience, generosity and kindness. Even the Buddha had said, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may." We ourselves must walk the path, but Buddha clearly shows the way. Buddhism is therefore more of a moral philosophy, an ethical way of life. But since Buddha never emphasized upon his concept of the divine, Buddhism is left with some of the life's deepest questions unanswered. Questions such as the origin of the universe and the purpose of man's existence are yet to be answered. Buddhism grew in its appeal in the early days and grew in stature with generous patronage from Indian royalty and merchants. Buddhist monasteries raised beautiful hemispherical stone sculptures called stupas over the relics of Buddha in reverence to his memory. Buddhism has had a great impact on Indian art, iconography, and architecture. It gradually lost its race to Hinduism as time progressed and its monastery degenerated. What led to the disappearance of Buddhism from the country of its birth is perhaps the biggest mystery and yet to be properly understood. There are theories and theories, but no consensus. Muslim invaders from Afghanistan and Turkey were once to destroy it physically. Hundreds and thousands of stupas and Buddhist universities like Nalanda were destroyed, and the carnage of monks took place more often than not. It made taking to Buddhism a risky proposition. The Hindus, whose faith was naturally jeopardized by Buddhists, gave it a philosophical blow. They were the first to damage its credentials. In a counterattack, they made fun of the monks and talked about their degeneration. The Hasya literature in Sanskrit is full of humor and satire against the Buddhist monks, of how they took to meat, drinks and women. Hindus also did a course correction of sort and gave up unpopular practices and even adopted the best practices from Buddhism, making it more people-friendly. However, interestingly, if Buddhism was brought down by anyone, it was the Buddhist monks themselves. They deviated from their course and were taken over by worldly desires. They almost turned the Buddhist philosophy upside down, making a god out of Buddha, and fought severely, among them giving rise to several cults within Buddhism. Their degeneration stopped public support and money on which they lived. Even the state patronage, vain as rulers of that time, turned to Hinduism in the wake of public mood. Naturally, Buddhism lost the respect in which it was earlier held. It nevertheless flourished in the Far East, where the monks could keep their values intact. Though it did not replace Hinduism in the subcontinent, but still has its very significant place in the Indian subcontinent. There are many shrines and stupas that are visited by devotees all across the world, especially from the Southeast Asia, where it is a dominant religion. Buddhism is making a comeback of sorts as there is a renewed interest in Buddhist philosophy in the West, with a few prominent Hollywood stars showing interest in Buddhist teachings. The charisma of the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader from Tibet, has been a vital factor in popularizing it. In India, though, the foundation of the Mahabodhi Society in 1891 gave a large stimulus to the popularization of the Buddhist philosophy. It got another lease of life in 1956 when Dr. Ambedkar announced that he was converting to Buddhism. Along with him, hundreds and thousands of Dalits declared themselves Buddhist. In India today, Buddhism lives on, as do many other philosophies and cults, assimilated in her vast reservoir of spiritual wisdom.